Hey guys, T here. Today we got to look at the New Orleans. It's the Tier 6 American Heavy Cruiser, and it's on the map estuary regular capture the base mode game. Now, the New Orleans is kind of a nice bridge between the Pensacola and the Baltimore. It plays similarly to the Pensacola, but it has about 50% more armor, so properly angled, it's a lot more sturdy. Now, the Pensacola, it's a fairly hard-hitting ship, especially for a Tier 5 cruiser. But the problem with it is it has an accessible citadel that's other ships are able to hit from a fairly wide range of angles. So that makes that ship fairly unforgiving for players that aren't really focused on the angling as much as they should be. But the New Orleans is a lot, I'd say a lot easier, I suppose, to play. Now, you will be going against Tier 7 ships, which will definitely punish you if you make mistakes, but if you're angling, I find the Citadel quite a bit harder to find on the New Orleans. Maybe that's just me, but I don't think it's nearly as large of a Citadel, and of course the extra armor helps prevent kind of overpens or overmatches and stuff like that if you're properly angled. So now the guns, I was kind of testing the guns out early in this match just to confirm a belief of mine. I don't find that the AP does great damage at long range. You'll see a couple long range shots where we're able to find a citadel. Those shots will still do fine, but regular just long range shots into the side of the ship, I feel like the AP drops off in damage. So I'd probably recommend shooting HE. I would recommend playing around with it yourself just to test it. You should be doing that with all ships, but I'm kind of the mind that now there's an example of long-range citadels, but granted that was a failed platoon Tier 4 ship that was in this game, the Königsberg, I believe it is. So whether or not that made it easier to hit that citadel, I don't know. It's probably a lightly armored ship. But anyways, the guns they're definitely nice, but I find the Baltimore to be, you can get a lot of damage with the AP at any range, and in my experience the New Orleans should probably be firing HE at longer range and then switch to AP when the trajectories flatten out a little bit. Now in this game we had a middle spawn in the estuary. I find that to be an interesting place to start. You can either be quite effective there or be quite ineffective, and it has a lot to do with A, what your team does, and B, what the enemy team does. For instance, this enemy team is pushing up quite aggressively along the western flank, so we're able to get some flanking shots into them. There you can see the Citadel is accessible on the ship if you are subjecting yourself to broadside fire, so you do want to be careful about that. I was attempting to get out of this kind of middle zone, which after a while it becomes hard to be effective there. And I didn't even see what ship caught me the first shot there, but once I noticed the Scharnhorst and this Fuso here, I kind of had a little bit of a oh boy moment. But luckily they were both kind of focused on someone else. I'm able to zoom by there and actually get a couple of volleys into them that were fairly effective. Now here we have an enemy Mayoko. He's perfectly broadside. I'm clearly visible. I'm targeted, and yeah, we're able to land some great citadels, but he's not firing. So that to me suggests that he's likely launching torpedoes. Anytime a ship that should be shooting someone, I mean, I feel like he should have been shooting me, but he definitely had a shot at someone, but he wasn't doing that, so he's probably launching torpedoes. I should be using the sonar right now. That's a bit of a mistake. Luckily for me, his shot was a little bit behind me. And there's what we were talking about earlier on the Pensacola. Even though he was fairly steeply angled, we were able to punch right through him. So that Citadel, due to the lower armor rating on that ship, you can actually punch it pretty hard. Now there I was trying to do the same thing with the Mayoko. That's a much heavily armored ship, and you saw he bounced that entire volley. Now here he's attempting to launch the rear torpedoes again, or the torpedoes on the other side. The torpedoes on the Tier 6 and 7 Japanese cruisers are basically rear firing, so that was a mistake on his part. If he was dead set on firing those torpedoes, he needed to be kiting away from me. And here's another mistake the enemy makes. The Pensacola is rushing me. There's no reason for him to do that. The Pensacola is a far more effective ship at range, and especially going toe-to-toe against the New Orleans, he does not want to be doing a Joe Frazier impression and trying to bob and weave in there and try and land a left hook. He needs to be playing from a lot further distance. So I was a little bit taken aback when he rushed me there, but nevertheless, we're able to secure the kill. And here we square off against this Fuso. He just perfectly broadsided me. I'm content to keep laying into him with these armor-piercing rounds. And I am trying to be focusing on my angling there. You see I kind of over-angled a little bit if you're looking at the diagram in the bottom. But if I'm able to stay fairly steeply angled here, I should have relative success. But if he catches me right on kind of the flatter part of the nose, like he's able to do right there, he can overmatch that armor on my ship, and he's able to score a citadel from a position on my ship that I thought I was doing at least a fairly decent job of angling, maybe not perfect, but so you do need to be careful here. You can't necessarily be thinking just because it's got more armor than the Pensacola that you're basically invincible. That's definitely not the case. But again, if you're angling properly, you can see we took minimal damage there, so it just kind of depends on the RNG a little bit and the luck and exactly where on your ship they're able to hit you, but you do want to be careful about that going toe-to-toe against battleships. Now, taking a look at the game, we are up a ship, but they have managed to sneak a ship destroyer into our cap and are subjecting us to a possibility of losing via cap. They were able to secure the entire eastern side, and we were able to secure the entire western side, but they did that on their side a little bit more efficiently. And they're able to eliminate another ship on our side, so now we have 3 ships to 3. Now, how I currently have this spec'd out, at the time I shot this footage, I had Norman Scott with Makawa and Swirsky as inspirations, both of which increase the concealment of your ship. I don't have a lot of cruiser commander options at the moment. It's not just USN battleships. I got 16 out of 28 commanders, and a lot of my guys in the Discord have about somewhere between 22 and all of them. So my commander options are somewhat more limited than I think a lot of people's. But it does come in handy here. You see I have a pretty decent detectability rating on this ship, so I'm trying to get into that cap and kill the destroyer before this Scharnhorst is able to kill me. And yeah, I was pointed completely broadside to him, but I was hoping to stay out of his detection range long enough to get rid of that destroyer. Now, for some reason, he got off the cap. He might be... for some reason, some players make poor decisions when it comes to capping. I don't know. It does look like he has someone challenging him, so for whatever reason, he left the cap. Now he's back on it, but I think because he got off briefly and because we did have someone that could potentially shoot at him, I figured I needed to start whittling down the Scharnhorst a little bit. Obviously, he is a ship that can do a nice Joe Frazier impression, and the closer he gets to our team, the more problematic that's going to be. Now, this Icarus is he seems to be operating with a fair amount of impunity, even though all of the capture points are residing within his ship. We have one person that looks like they're trying to torp him, and they refuse to shoot. The first shot I took was 5 ticks behind. That was just a mental mistake on my part, but this shot was a little bit more well aimed, and he gone. So, you know, if nobody's going to shoot the destroyers, you got to do it. And if you're not confident in your ability to hit the destroyers, then you need to keep practicing. It's bottom line. You can't be losing games because nobody is willing to shoot a destroyer. So now here I get into a bad situation, and I recognize it quite early, but I'm barreling into the Scharnhorst, and I'm barreling into that enemy cruiser. I forgot what it is off the top of my head. But the problem is, by the time I'm able to turn my ship here, they both can cycle through a full reload, so I'm kind of stuck right here. And what I need to do, I think, is definitely slow down. I don't need to be rushing into the Scharnhorst. That's not a good play. You can see there, if I angle well, his gun caliber is a lot less than that Fuso, for instance, so my survivability against him angled is fine. and we're taking damage with each successive volley, but I don't need to be closing the gap here. But I wanted to turn away, but just because they can constantly shoot me, the minute I try and turn, I'm going to get smoked. Now, here I'm a one-shot, likely anyway, so I did want to take a shot. I guess it's in Indianapolis was the other ship. So I wanted to at least tell him what I thought about his efforts to kill me. But those two teamed up. It was just kind of a mistake that once I was locked into it, and had I tried to correct it at any time, I would have been killed. So I did want to take a note about this Nagato. He's attempting to go around this island and flank. And I sat here and watched the end of this game, and I admired his thinking outside of the box, but the problem is we were 3 ships to 2. Now, granted, it appears we were both, 2 of our ships were low health, and then, their Scharnhorst was low health. The Indy was high health, nearly full health. So I like the idea, but I wish he needed to think, how long is this going to take me to get around the island? And it took him too long. By the time he could get around there and flank, those 2 ships were able to kill his 2 ships. So the 3-on-2 advantage diminished into a 2-on-1 disadvantage. And it was unfortunate. Again, I'm not knocking him. I like players actually thinking as opposed to some of the moves you see out there. But unfortunately, it just didn't work. So you do need to take into consideration. I mean, the ships obviously move slow. This game's kind of a slow motion game, so even going around islands that seem relatively small often takes a lot longer than you might think, and you need to take that into account. So that was unfortunate. I don't know if we would have won had we all been firing on them at the same time, because we were all relatively in the same position, and it would have been fairly easy for them to angle their armor, but I think we would have had just a slightly better chance. But anyway, that's a look at the New Orleans. I thought that's pretty prototypical how you want to play it, so I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, leave them below, and we'll see you guys all later. All right, peace.